My sister called me a loser and told me not to show up for Christmas. So I didn't, and neither did her rent, her utilities, or the next tuition payment. My name is Sarah, and this is about how my sister Jessica learned the hard way that actions have consequences. To understand this story, you need to know about my relationship with my family. I'm 28, work in software development, and I've always been what you might call the responsible one. My sister Jessica is 24, a graduate student pursuing her master's in psychology, and she's always been the golden child. Mom and Dad adore her, constantly bragging about her academic achievements, while I've been treated more like the family ATM than an actual daughter. Don't get me wrong, I love my family. But over the years, I've noticed a pattern. When Jessica needed her undergraduate loans paid off so she wouldn't graduate with debt, guess who Mom and Dad asked to help out? When she wanted to study abroad in France for a semester but couldn't afford it, who do you think funded that dream? When she needed a car, an apartment deposit, or help with living expenses, they always came to me with sob stories about how family helps family. The thing is, I never minded helping. I make good money, 6 figures, and I don't have many expenses. I live modestly, save aggressively, and I genuinely wanted to see Jessica succeed. What bothered me was the lack of gratitude and the growing sense of entitlement that came with each request. This all came to a head last December, about 7 months ago now. I had driven the 3 hours to my parents' house for our annual Christmas planning dinner. It's this tradition we've had since Jessica and I were kids. The first Sunday in December, we all get together to plan the holiday menu, exchange gift lists, and coordinate schedules. I walked into the living room where everyone was gathered and immediately felt the tension. Jessica was sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by textbooks and her laptop, clearly stressed about something. Mom was fussing over her, bringing her tea and asking if she needed anything. Dad was reading some research paper Jessica had written, nodding approvingly. "Hey everyone," I said, setting down the bottle of wine I'd brought. Jessica barely looked up. "Oh, hi Sarah." Mom gave me a quick hug. "How was the drive, honey?" "Fine," I said, settling into my usual spot on the couch. "So what's the plan for Christmas this year?" That's when Jessica exploded. "You know what, Sarah? I'm so sick of this," she said, slamming her laptop shut. "Every year it's the same thing. You show up here acting like you're so generous and wonderful, but you just make everything about you." I was stunned. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," she continued, her voice getting louder. "You throw money around like it makes you important, but you're just a code monkey who got lucky. You act like you're better than everyone else because you make decent money, but you have no real accomplishments. No advanced degree, no meaningful relationships, no real purpose in life." The room went dead silent. Mom and Dad looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything to defend me. "Jessica, that's not fair," I started. "No, let me finish," she interrupted. "I'm trying to make something of myself here. I'm working on research that could actually help people. I'm building a real career, and every family gathering becomes the Sarah show where everyone has to be grateful for whatever scraps you throw our way." I felt my face burning with embarrassment and hurt. "I've never asked for gratitude." "Bullshit," Jessica snapped. "You love playing the martyr. Poor Sarah, working so hard to support her ungrateful family. Well, you know what? I don't need your pity money anymore. I don't need you acting like you're doing me some huge favor by existing." She stood up, gathering her papers. "And honestly? I don't think you should come to Christmas this year. The family needs a break from your whole wounded benefactor act. Maybe stay home and count your money or whatever it is you do for fun." She stormed out of the room, and I heard her bedroom door slam upstairs. I looked at my parents, expecting them to say something, anything, to defend me or at least acknowledge how cruel Jessica had been. Instead, Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. "She's under a lot of stress with her thesis," he said quietly. "You know how she gets." "Maybe it would be better if you didn't come this year," Mom added, not meeting my eyes. "Let things cool down." I sat there for a moment, processing what had just happened. My own parents were uninviting me from Christmas because Jessica had thrown a tantrum. After years of paying off her debts, funding her dreams, and never asking for anything in return, this was what I got. "Fine," I said, standing up. "I won't come to Christmas." I grabbed my coat and left without another word. The drive home was a blur of hurt and anger. I kept replaying Jessica's words in my head. Code monkey who got lucky. No real accomplishments. No meaningful relationships. Each phrase hit like a physical blow. But as I sat in my apartment that night, something shifted. The hurt was still there, but underneath it, I felt something else: determination. Jessica wanted to see what happened when I stopped being the family ATM? Fine. I'd show her exactly what that looked like. The first thing I did was open my laptop and start going through my financial records. Over the past 6 years, since Jessica started college, I had given my family, specifically Jessica, a total of $127,000. Let me break that down for you. $47,000 for undergraduate tuition and fees, $23,000 for her study abroad semester, $18,000 for her car, she wanted a reliable Honda, I paid cash, $15,000 for various living expenses during college, $12,000 for graduate school application fees, deposits, and moving expenses, $8,000 for her laptop, textbooks, and other essential school supplies, $4,000 for various emergencies over the years, and that didn't include smaller amounts, dinners out when I visited, gifts, plane tickets for family vacations she couldn't afford, random emergencies that always seemed to happen right before I got paid. I was conservative in my estimate, but between all the documented expenses and the smaller undocumented ones, I'd probably given them closer to $140,000 over 6 years. The thing is, none of this was given as loans. Every time, my parents approached it as family helping family, with the understanding that Jessica would pay it forward someday when she was established in her career. There were no written agreements, no payment schedules, nothing legally binding. But here's what Jessica didn't know: I had been covering a lot more than just the big expenses. After college, Jessica had moved into a nice apartment near her graduate school. The rent was $1,800 a month, which was way beyond what she could afford on her graduate assistant stipend of $1,600 monthly. So my parents had asked me to help with housing costs. I had been paying $1,200 of her rent every month for the past 2 years. Her utilities, electricity, internet, phone, I covered those too because her stipend barely covered food and transportation. And this semester, her final semester, I had prepaid her tuition of $8,500 because she was so close to finishing and it would be such a shame if financial stress derailed her thesis work. Jessica had no idea about most of these arrangements. As far as she knew, she was living independently and managing her finances like an adult. My parents had asked me to keep quiet about the extent of my support because they didn't want her to feel bad or dependent. Well, she wanted independence? She was about to get it. I started making phone calls the next morning. First, I called the utility companies. I had set up all of Jessica's utilities in my name because her credit was limited when she moved in, just student loans and one credit card she'd gotten senior year of college, and the utility companies wanted hefty deposits for new customers. It had seemed easier at the time to just put everything in my name. I gave them each 30 days notice for service disconnection. Next, I called her internet provider. Same deal, 30 days notice. Then I called her landlord, Mr. Peterson. This was the trickiest conversation because I didn't want to get Jessica in legal trouble, but I also wasn't going to keep paying her rent. Hi Mr. Peterson, this is Sarah Chen. I've been helping with the rent payments for apartment 4B. Oh yes, Sarah. How are you? Jessica is such a lovely tenant. I'm well, thank you. I'm calling to let you know that I won't be able to continue helping with the rent payments after this month. Jessica will need to handle the full amount going forward. There was a pause. Oh. Does Jessica know about this change? She will soon. I wanted to give you advance notice since you've been so understanding about the payment arrangement. I appreciate that. I'll need to talk to Jessica about this. The lease is in her name, so she'll be responsible for the full amount. Of course. Thanks for everything, Mr. Peterson. I prepaid tuition for Jessica Chen's spring semester, I explained to the Bursa representative. I need to request a refund of that payment. The student has decided to handle her own financial responsibilities going forward. I understand. We'll need you to fill out some paperwork, and there may be administrative fees involved, but we can process that refund. The student will then be responsible for paying the tuition by the deadline to avoid being dropped from classes. It took about 2 weeks of paperwork, phone calls, and a $100 administrative fee, but eventually, they processed the refund. Jessica would get a bill for spring tuition that she thought was already paid. The beautiful thing about all of this was that I wasn't doing anything vindictive or illegal. I was simply stopping my financial support. Every adult is responsible for their own living expenses, right? Jessica wanted to be treated like an independent adult who didn't need her sister's pity money. Done. I didn't hear from my family at all in December. No calls, no texts, no invitations to last-minute Christmas events. It stung, but it also confirmed that Jessica had been serious about not wanting me around. Christmas came and went. I actually had a lovely day. I volunteered at a local shelter in the morning, then had dinner with my friend Rachel and her family. It was peaceful and drama-free. The silence from my family during the holidays was deafening, but also oddly liberating. For the first time in years, I spent Christmas morning thinking about what I wanted to do instead of worrying about family drama or financial obligations. I made myself a nice breakfast, read a book, and actually enjoyed the peace. Meanwhile, I knew Jessica was probably struggling, but I hadn't anticipated just how quickly reality would hit her. She had always been somewhat sheltered from the practical aspects of adult life. Even during college, when she lived in dorms, most of her expenses were covered by scholarships, family contributions, or loans she didn't have to think about repaying immediately. Moving into her graduate apartment had been her first real taste of independence, except it wasn't really independence at all, it was just the illusion of independence, subsidized by me. I found out later that the first crisis hit on December 30th, when Jessica came home from visiting a friend to find her apartment freezing cold. The heat had been shut off. She called the gas company, confused and panicked, only to be told that the account had been closed per the account holder's request. But I'm the tenant, she had protested. Ma'am, the account is in the name of Sarah Chen. If you'd like to set up service in your name, we can do that, but you'll need to pay a deposit and connection fees. That's when Jessica started to piece together that something was very wrong. She called the electric company and got a similar story. Then the internet provider. Each call revealed another service that was in my name, not hers. She spent New Year's Eve at her friend Mike's apartment, frantically trying to figure out what was happening. When she called Mom and Dad, they claimed they were as confused as she was, though I found out later they knew exactly what was happening but didn't want to admit their role in the financial arrangements. Jessica, still not fully grasping the situation, assumed I had somehow made an error or that there was a computer glitch somewhere. She expected that when she called me, I would be horrified by the mistake and immediately fix everything. She had no idea that every single cancellation had been deliberate and carefully timed. The first sign that my plan was working came on January 2nd. I got a frantic call from Mom. Sarah, honey, we need to talk. Jessica is having some kind of financial crisis. I was at work, but I stepped outside to take the call. What kind of crisis? Well, apparently there was some mix-up with her utilities, and they got shut off. And her internet too. She's been staying with friends for the past few days because she has no heat or electricity. That's terrible, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Has she called the utility companies to sort it out? She did, but they're saying the account was closed deliberately. She's so confused and stressed. You know how she gets with administrative stuff. I almost laughed. Jessica was pursuing a graduate degree in psychology, writing a thesis on cognitive behavioral therapy, but she got confused by utility bills? I'm sure she'll figure it out, I said. She's a smart, capable adult. Sarah. Mom's voice took on that familiar pleading tone. I know things were tense at Christmas, but Jessica is really struggling. Could you maybe help her sort this out? You're so good with this kind of thing. Mom, Jessica made it very clear that she doesn't want my help anymore. She said she doesn't need my pity money and that I should stop acting like a martyr. I'm just respecting her wishes. She didn't mean it like that. She absolutely meant it like that. She told me not to come to Christmas, and you and Dad agreed. So I'm giving everyone what they wanted, space from me and my money. There was a long silence. Sarah, please. She's your sister. Yes, she is. And when she's ready to apologize for what she said and how she treated me, we can talk. Until then, I'm sure she'll manage just fine. She's got her stipend and her natural independence. I hung up and went back to work. The next few days were oddly peaceful. For the first time in years, I wasn't fielding calls about Jessica's latest financial emergency or listening to my parents stress about how to help her. My phone stayed blissfully quiet, and I found myself actually enjoying the silence. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious about what was happening. I found myself checking Jessica's social media more often than I cared to admit. Her Instagram stories went from cheerful posts about thesis progress to radio silence. Her last Facebook post was from December 28th, a generic hope everyone had a great holiday. With a stock photo of Christmas lights. I wondered if she was starting to piece together what had happened, or if she was still convinced it was all some kind of administrative error that would magically resolve itself. 2 days later, Jessica called me directly. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Sarah, what the hell did you do? She sounded panicked and angry. What do you mean? My utilities are shut off, my internet is disconnected, and now I got a bill from the university saying I owe money for spring tuition. What did you do? I took a deep breath. I stopped paying for things that aren't my responsibility. What are you talking about? You never paid for my utilities. Jessica, I've been paying for your electricity, gas, internet, and phone for 2 years. I've also been covering $1,200 of your rent every month. And I had prepaid your spring tuition, but I requested a refund. Silence. You're lying, she finally said, but her voice was uncertain. Ask Mom and Dad. Better yet, look at your lease and utility accounts. Check whose name is on everything. More silence. Why would you do this now? She whispered. Because you told me you didn't need my pity money anymore. You called me a loser with no real accomplishments and said I shouldn't come to Christmas. So I decided to respect your independence. Sarah, I was stressed, No, Jessica. You were cruel. And Mom and Dad backed you up. You all made it clear that my contributions weren't valued or even acknowledged. So I stopped contributing? You can't just cut me off like this. I have bills due, my thesis defense is in 2 months. You have a stipend. You have the same income thousands of other graduate students manage to live on. You'll figure it out. Sarah, please. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean what I said at Christmas. Which part didn't you mean? The part where you called me a code monkey who got lucky? The part where you said I have no real accomplishments? Or the part where you said I shouldn't come to Christmas because the family needed a break from me? She was crying now. I was just stressed about my thesis and you decided to take it out on the person who's been funding your life for 6 years. The person who paid off your undergraduate loans, funded your study abroad, bought your car, and has been secretly covering most of your living expenses. I didn't know about the rent and utilities, because Mom and Dad asked me to keep it quiet so you wouldn't feel dependent. Ironic, isn't it? Sarah, I can't afford my rent without your help. I'll get evicted. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you decided you didn't need my pity money. Please, I'm begging you. I'll do anything. I'll apologize to everyone, I'll make it right. Jessica, I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this because you made it clear that my financial support was unwanted and unappreciated. You wanted independence, and I'm giving it to you. But my thesis will get written or it won't. That's up to you now. I hung up. Over the next week, I got calls from everyone. Mom, Dad, even some of Jessica's friends who somehow got my number. Everyone had the same message: I was being too harsh, Jessica was sorry, families should forgive and forget. The most infuriating call came from my Uncle Tom, Dad's brother, who had never shown much interest in our family dynamics before. Sarah, your father told me what's happening with Jessica, he said in that patronizing tone he used when he thought he was being wise. I know she said some hurtful things, but cutting off a young woman's utilities in the middle of winter? That's dangerous, sweetheart. Uncle Tom, Jessica is 24 years old with a graduate degree. She's perfectly capable of calling utility companies and setting up accounts in her own name. That's what every other adult in America does. But she's family. Yes, she is. And when she decided to attack me personally and tell me I wasn't welcome at Christmas, she made a choice about how she wanted to treat family. She was just stressed. You know what, Uncle Tom? I've been stressed too. I've been working full-time and supporting another adult's lifestyle for years, and I never took it out on anyone by calling them a loser with no real accomplishments. He was quiet for a moment. Your parents said you've been helping with expenses. I've given Jessica and our parents over $127,000 in the past 6 years. I paid off her undergraduate loans, funded her study abroad, bought her a car, and have been covering most of her living expenses without her even knowing it. And when I showed up to Christmas planning, she told me I was worthless and unwanted. Another pause. I didn't realize the extent. No one did, because I never made a big deal about it. I just quietly helped whenever asked. And this is what I got for it. Uncle Tom's tone shifted after that. Sarah, I'm sorry. I didn't understand the full situation. Nobody does, Tom. Everyone just sees Jessica struggling now and assumes I'm being cruel. But nobody wants to talk about the years of cruel words, or the fact that she's only struggling because she was living beyond her means on my dime. But here's the thing, none of them offered any real solutions. None of them said they would help Jessica financially. None of them acknowledged that what she had said was unacceptable. They just wanted me to go back to being the family ATM so their lives could return to normal. Even Uncle Tom, after his initial outrage, ended the call with, "Well, I hope you two can work this out," rather than offering to help Jessica himself. I found out later what happened during those first few weeks of January. Jessica had to take out emergency loans to pay her rent and get her utilities turned back on. She borrowed money from friends for groceries and gas. She applied for additional student aid, but the spring semester had already started, so her options were limited. The process was humiliating for her in ways I hadn't anticipated. She had to call her landlord and explain that she couldn't make the full rent payment, something she'd never had to do before. She had to ask friends for small loans, admitting that she was in financial trouble. She had to sit in the financial aid office at her university, filling out emergency assistance forms like a freshman who'd run out of meal plan money. For someone who had always prided herself on being independent and together, these conversations were devastating to her self-image. Later, she told me that she'd cried in her car after almost every one of these interactions, not just from stress but from the shame of realizing how unprepared she was for basic adult responsibilities. She also had to get a part-time job tutoring undergraduate students, which cut into her thesis writing time significantly. Most importantly, she had to have some very uncomfortable conversations with our parents about money. Turns out, They had been hiding the extent of my financial contributions from Jessica, but they had also been exaggerating their own financial struggles to me. Mom and Dad weren't broke. They had retirement savings, they owned their house outright, and Dad still worked part-time as a consultant. They could have helped Jessica themselves, they just preferred using my money instead of their own. When Jessica realized this, she was furious with all of us. She felt manipulated by our parents and betrayed by me. In her mind, I had been secretly controlling her life, making her dependent without her knowledge. From my perspective, I had been generous to a fault, and my family had taken advantage of that generosity while treating me like an ATM rather than a person. The real turning point came in February. Jessica's thesis advisor, Dr. Martinez, called me out of the blue. "Is this Sarah Chen, Jessica's sister?" "Yes, how can I help you?" "I'm calling because Jessica mentioned that she's been having some financial difficulties that are affecting her academic work. She said there was a family situation." I sighed. "Dr. Martinez, I appreciate your concern, but this is really between Jessica and me." "I understand, but I wanted you to know that Jessica is one of my most promising graduate students. Her thesis research on trauma-informed therapy for adolescents could make a real difference in the field. It would be a shame if financial stress derailed her at this point." That stopped me short. "Her thesis is on trauma-informed therapy?" "Yes, specifically working with teenagers who have experienced family dysfunction and neglect. Her research could help a lot of kids who don't have support systems." I felt something twist in my stomach. I didn't know that. She's very passionate about it. She's mentioned wanting to work with low-income families after graduation, kids who can't afford traditional therapy. It's really admirable work. After I hung up, I sat in my car for a long time thinking. I had been so focused on Jessica's words and actions that I hadn't really considered what she was actually studying or why. Trauma-informed therapy for kids from dysfunctional families? That hit close to home in ways I wasn't ready to examine. But I still wasn't ready to just forgive and forget. Words have consequences, and Jessica needed to understand that. The next breakthrough came in March. I got a text from Jessica. "Sarah, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to tell you something. I talked to Mom and Dad about everything, all the money you've given over the years, how they asked you to keep it secret, all of it. I had no idea how much you've sacrificed for me. I'm not asking for anything, I just need you to know that I understand now how badly I screwed up." I didn't respond immediately, but I was curious. A few days later, another text. "I got a job at the Campus Writing Center. It doesn't pay much, but it's helping. I also applied for a research grant that might cover some expenses. I'm trying to figure this out on my own like you said I should." Then Mom told me about all the times they asked you for money when I was in college. I always wondered how they could afford to help me so much. I feel like such an idiot. And finally, "I know I have no right to ask, but could we maybe talk? Not about money. I just miss my sister." That last text got to me. Despite everything, I missed her too. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our cities. Jessica looked tired and stressed, but also more mature somehow. Less entitled, more thoughtful. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as we sat down with our drinks. "You said you wanted to talk." I did. "I need to apologize, and I need to explain, but mostly I need to apologize." She took a deep breath. "Sarah, what I said at Christmas was unforgivable. I called you names, I dismissed your career and your life, and I basically told you that you weren't welcome in our family. There's no excuse for that." I nodded but didn't say anything. I was stressed about my thesis, and I was feeling overwhelmed, but that doesn't justify taking it out on you. Especially not you, considering everything you've done for me over the years. "Jessica, did you really not know about the rent payments? The utilities?" She shook her head. "I swear I didn't. I knew Mom and Dad were helping me, but I thought it was coming from them. When you told me you'd been paying for everything, I called them to ask why they'd hidden it from me." "What did they say?" "They said they didn't want me to feel guilty or dependent, and they thought it would be easier if I just focused on school. But Sarah, they also admitted that they'd been exaggerating their financial situation to you. They're not broke. They could have helped me themselves." That confirmed what I had suspected. "Why didn't they?" "Because it was easier to ask you. You never said no, you never made them feel guilty about it, and it didn't affect their lifestyle at all." We sat in silence for a moment. "I'm so angry at them," Jessica continued. "But I'm angrier at myself. Even if I didn't know the details, I knew I was getting help from somewhere. I should have asked more questions. I should have been more grateful. I should have treated you better." "Yes, you should have. I know. And I know saying sorry doesn't fix anything. You trusted me and our parents, and we all let you down in different ways." "Jessica, it wasn't just about the money. It was about respect. You made me feel like I was worthless, like my only value to the family was as a source of funding. She started crying. That's not true. That's not how I see you at all. Then why did you say those things? Because I was jealous, she whispered. I was jealous of your independence, your success, your ability to just handle things without falling apart. I felt like such a failure next to you, and instead of dealing with those feelings, I lashed out. This was not what I had expected to hear. Jessica, you're getting a master's degree in psychology. You're doing research that could help people. How does that make you a failure? Because I'm 24 years old and I can't even pay my own rent. Because I've been living in this bubble where everything was taken care of for me, and I didn't even realize it. Because you've been supporting me for years, and instead of being grateful, I resented you for being more successful. I felt my anger starting to soften, but I wasn't ready to let go of it completely. So what happens now? I asked. I don't know. I hope someday you can forgive me, but I understand if you can't. I hope we can rebuild our relationship, but I know that's up to you. What I can tell you is that I'm not going to ask you for money anymore, and I'm not going to let Mom and Dad do it either. What do you mean? I told them that if they want to help me financially, it needs to come from them, not from you. And any help needs to be transparent, no more secret arrangements or hidden subsidies. How are you managing? It's hard, she admitted. I'm working 20 hours a week, I had to move to a cheaper apartment, and I'm living on ramen and peanut butter sandwiches most days. But I'm managing. And honestly, it feels good to know that I'm actually supporting myself. What about your thesis? It's taking longer than I hoped because of the work schedule, but Dr. Martinez is being flexible. I might graduate a semester later than planned, but I'll graduate. We talked for another hour. Jessica told me more about her research, her career plans, and her growing understanding of how privileged and sheltered her life had been. I told her about my work, my friends, and how hurt I had been by the whole Christmas situation. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was a start. Over the next few months, we rebuilt our relationship slowly. Jessica would text me updates about her thesis progress or funny stories from her tutoring job. I would share details about projects at work or books I was reading. We didn't talk about money or family drama, we just talked like sisters. The real test came in May, when Jessica defended her thesis. She had invited me to the defense, but I wasn't sure if I should go. We were getting along better, but I didn't want to send mixed signals about our relationship. In the end, I decided to go. Not because I had forgiven everything, but because I was genuinely proud of what she had accomplished. The thesis defense was impressive. Jessica presented her research on trauma-informed therapy with confidence and expertise. Her work focused on helping teenagers from chaotic family situations develop coping mechanisms and build healthy relationships. The irony wasn't lost on me. After the defense, we went out for dinner, just the two of us. Jessica had passed with flying colors and would graduate in 2 weeks. I'm proud of you, I told her over dessert. Thank you. That means everything to me. What's next? I got accepted to a PhD program at State University, she said. Full funding, tuition waiver plus a research assistantship that pays enough to live on. Jessica, that's amazing. I also got offered a job at a community mental health center, working with at-risk teens. It doesn't pay as much as the PhD program, but it's exactly what I want to do. Which one are you choosing? The job. I'm tired of being a student, and I want to start actually helping people. I smiled. I think that's the right choice. We finished dinner and walked to our cars. As we were saying goodbye, Jessica turned to me. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. Okay. Do you think you'll ever be able to fully forgive me for what I said at Christmas? I thought about it. I don't know. What you said really hurt me, and it changed how I see our family dynamics. But I'm proud of the person you're becoming, and I want us to have a relationship. Even if it's different than before? Maybe different is better. Maybe we needed to have this crisis to build something more honest. She hugged me, and for the first time in months, it felt natural. That brings me to now, 7 months after that terrible Christmas confrontation. Jessica graduated with her master's degree and started her job at the Community Mental Health Center. She's living in a tiny apartment, driving her Honda Civic with 200,000 miles on it, and learning to budget like a real adult. Our parents and I are still working things out. They've acknowledged that they took advantage of my generosity and that they handled the whole situation poorly. They've also started being more honest about their own finances and their ability to help Jessica when she needs it. Most importantly, they invited me to Christmas this year, and Jessica personally called to make sure I knew I was wanted and welcome. As for Jessica and me, we talk regularly now. Our relationship is different, more equal, more honest, and based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. She's never asked me for money since that day in January when I cut off her utilities, and I've never offered. She's still paying off the emergency loan she had to take out during those first few months, but she's managing. She's even started a small emergency fund, which she's ridiculously proud of. The other day, she sent me a photo of her first paycheck from the mental health center with a caption, "Look, I'm a real adult now." I laughed and texted back, "You always were. You just needed to prove it to yourself." Do I regret cutting off financial support so abruptly? Sometimes. It was harsh, and it caused Jessica a lot of stress during an already difficult time in her life. But I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret demanding respect and appreciation. And I don't regret forcing my family to confront the unhealthy dynamics we had fallen into. Jessica learned that words have consequences and that financial independence is both challenging and empowering. My parents learned that they can't use one child as a bank account to support another. And I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop enabling someone's dependence. We're all better for it, even if the process was painful. So that's my story. My sister called me a loser and told me not to show up for Christmas. So I didn't, and neither did her rent, her utilities, or the next tuition payment. Sometimes the best revenge is just letting people experience the natural consequences of their choices. The funny thing is, it stopped being about revenge pretty quickly. Once I saw Jessica actually rising to the challenge and taking responsibility for her life, I stopped wanting to punish her and started wanting to support her growth, just not financially. This Christmas will be our first family holiday since the great blow-up of last year. Jessica is bringing homemade cookies, the only dessert she can afford to contribute. I'm bringing wine and my famous green bean casserole, and Mom and Dad are hosting with a promise that there will be no drama and no requests for money. I'm actually looking forward to it. We're not the same family we were before, but maybe we're a better one. And if anyone at Christmas dinner calls me a code monkey who got lucky? Well, let's just say I know exactly what consequences look like now.